Please welcome to the stage, Andrzej Marczewski.
Thank you, sir. Hello. Yes, I'm Andrzej Marczewski. And I don't even say Andrzej right. It should be Andrzej, I think the Polish in here would probably be saying. But I'm English, and my dad never really taught me properly. So he does speak Polish, but like a 5-year-old would speak Polish, because he's been here since 1939. So he's when he speaks to his family, they just think it's like speaking to a child now. He's 85, so we're heading back in that direction. Right, so it's that button, isn't it? There we go. Right, so who am I? Gave a pretty good intro there. I've been around since about 2011 in the industry. I now work at a company called Monete as a digital experience consultant. Sounds like a weird change from gamification. It's all about behavioral engineering, behavioral change. I still use everything that I'm going to talk to you about now every day, but I use it for online retail optimization, getting people better experiences, getting better outcomes for companies, that kind of thing. I have worked on peer review papers. I wrote Even Ninja Monkeys Like to Play, which is that one. Re-released it as the Gamification Design Handbook, purely to make more money off it. No other reason, nothing, not even going to pretend. I have been in technology since about 2000. What else have I done? Oh, I play guitar. And everything, you'll find me on social media on every platform possible as Dave Rage. And it's not D-Average, it's Dave Rage. And I discovered, there's a tool to transfer you from Twitter to Blue Sky, sorry, X to Blue Sky. Yeah. There is a furry artist called Dave Rage Art. And so I have hundreds of followers who are expecting me to put pictures of, like, furry costumes on. And if you don't know what a furry is, don't Google it right now. So I'm here to talk to you about the players. And I'm very honored to kind of open this up and talk to you a little bit about players. If you don't know me, you will soon. But players and player types and user types and taxonomies, they're kind of my gig. They've been doing these for years now. And the whole point of this sort of set of talks today is to try and think a bit more about users, players, and projects, rather than just thinking about gamification elements and points and badges and all that kind of stuff. Problem is, we're looking at these sorts of people. We aren't looking at this really happy, engaged lot, and AI has been very heavily involved in my talk, by the way. We aren't looking at these kind of people. We are generally looking at these kind of people, disengaged from what they're doing. So when we talk about thinking about the players, we're thinking about them. And I make this very important point because when we think about gamification, our first thought is games. It's in the word. But if we think about the definitions of gamification, it's game-like or non-game contexts. All these sort of words get thrown in. So we're not engaging with people who are already engaged. We wouldn't need to if they were. We're engaging with people who probably are a little bit disengaged, or they're having some... There's a reason why they are not our happy little lot here. Oh, that's too many slides back. But why? Thank you, Ryan. Them. So, I'm going to move across here because I like to annoy people who are filming and move around the stage. What have all of these people got in common?
They're people.
They're people? Yeah, that's very good. Well done. One badge for you.
They're all watching the same game.
They are watching the same game. They're all there probably for the same reason. Anything else that's absolutely the same for all of them? They all have in common. They're all unique. Every single person there is unique. Now, they are probably, it's obviously an American photograph, they're probably watching something. They're all there for the same reason. The experience they are about to have is actually the same for all of them. So it's the opposite to what we're going to be talking about, really. But their motivations to be there are different. So every single one of them will have their own motivation. Primary motivation could be to watch the game. It could be a child who only gets to spend a couple of hours with their dad every week, and this is how they spend that time together. It could be a Thanksgiving tradition. It could be that they're going there to honor a late parent. There could be a million different motivations to go and see this. So every single one of them is connected by their uniqueness. And that's how we have to think about our users and our players when we're gamifying. We are all connected by uniqueness. So I did a little bit of research, and I will admit, again, AI has been involved in this. But based on surveys from around 2024, up to 80% of consumers now expect personalized experiences. And that's across everything from healthcare to retail to education. And it varies between 60 and about 85%, depending on what you're looking at. But general average is about 80%. So you think about that. 80% of people coming to any experience that you're giving them are expecting it in some way to be personal to them. So rather than the previous slide, where they're all there for the same experience, they actually all want slightly different experiences. Because not only do they potentially have different motivations to be there, they might not want to be there in the first place. So if we think about any of the platforms or any of the systems we're trying to gamify, very often we're gamifying because people aren't really wanting to be there. Or for some reason they're disengaged with it. So keep that in mind whilst we talk. So how did it all start? Why am I interested in player types and taxonomies? Richard Bartle, that's why. He came up with this. You've all seen this, you've all used it, and you've all misused it. This is a problematic model, really, because not for games. So it's designed for them. They're already engaged. It was built based on his multi-user dungeon, which in our world would be like World of Warcraft. It's a social platform with axes, it's that kind of thing. So it was people who were already engaged and having fun, and he worked out this framework. It wasn't built for these guys. So when we look at this framework, we're looking at people, achievers, who are trying to collect everything, explorers, trying to find everything, socializers, trying to talk to everything, and killers. So, why did I create my own taxonomy? Killers. Because we all don't talk about killers in the right way. And there is a point to this. When I spoke to Bartle about this, he said to me that killers are the type of person who would make great trouble in becoming a socializer to be your best friend, so that when they stabbed you in the back, it would be much more fun for them. They're chameleons. There'll be any of these to get the advantage they needed to hurt someone. Not, as we all use it, competitors. They want to win. They don't care about winning. Now that's really, really problematic, because it's these people. Anyone who knows this, right? You go into business and you've got somebody whose only intention of being there is to hurt you. Psychopaths. And they're probably your bosses. Because there are studies that say that psychopathic tendencies are very high in management, especially higher management, CEOs especially. But it does cause a problem for us when we're trying to talk to people about gamification. Because we're saying to people, right, so we're going to have these people in here who are going to try and get everything. Then we've got the people who are going to find everything, talk to everyone, and kill them all. Well, hey, no, that's a hard conversation. That's a really tough conversation. So I started thinking a little bit about motivation. So this is where we're going to start our story. It's motivation. I don't think I came up with RAMP. I was one of the earlier users of RAMP. I'm sure I saw someone do it before me, but about 2012, I started doing this. It was originally the PRAM framework, because I'm really bad at coming up with framework names. But RAMP sounded cooler. PRAM framework just didn't quite work as well. But the idea was that if you look at research, there are 4 key motivators, or 3 key motivators actually. Relatedness, autonomy, and mastery. So self-determination theory. Purpose crept in here because whilst purpose and relatedness are actually directly connected, if you think about altruism, when we're building systems, we actually want to encourage people towards meaningful experiences generally, but altruism is a very different part of being a socializer. We need to think about how, question and answer systems, Yahoo Answers back in the day, Quora. You want to try and encourage specific altruistic behaviors. When I spoke to, I can't remember if it was Desi or Ryan, but one of them told me the reason that self-determination theory doesn't have purpose is because everyone already has purpose. All 3 of those other ones already have a purpose, which is why I chose to go around the altruistic purpose route. But the point was, I started from there thinking, right, these are the things that I'm seeing when I'm talking about gamification, when I'm building gamification, when I'm working with people who want to use gamification. We're all trying to understand what's motivating people to behave in the way they do. think back to that picture of 100 people who are all different, all their motivations are different. At their core, some of these will be involved. So that parent and child who get to see each other once a week, relatedness. People who might want to just go there because it's a bit of fun, a bit random, I just felt like going to a game, autonomy. They might be there trying to actually see how people are playing and find out some more information. They could be there scouting, mastery. Altruistic purpose, they could be there helping somebody. It could be part of their relatedness is it's their father's last wish for them to go. So we have to think about this when we're thinking about why people do what they do and how we engage with players in their own ways. So I started building my own little framework, and it went through some evolutions. It looked a bit like Bartles for a while. It then went a bit crazy, a little bit weirder still. Started to become a hexagon after a while, became a dodecad for a little bit. And it had some other variations, and it got involved with the 4 keys to play. There were lots of things. Marvel and DC asked me to not use that one. Specifically, I asked them permission to use their characters. They basically said, if we can't make money off it, no. So, okay, fine. But eventually it came down to this. Now, some of you have seen this new version. I'm not going to go into why it's colourful and why there are where they're all positioned the way they are. But achievers, mastery, philanthropist, purpose, free spirit, autonomy, players, rewards. We still need them in the system. My original 4 didn't include people who are extrinsically motivated. It could be people who are going to that game because they've been paid to go there. It could be a corporate event where actually, really, they're only going there to kind of actually get reward out of it from their peers. Relatedness, disruptors. I still had to include a killer in some way. But in business talks, what we're really looking for is people who disrupt the norm. Now, it could be positive, it could be negative. We're not worried about that right now. We deal with them differently. I've got all sorts of things written on that. Don't worry about them now. The point is, we came to these 6 different types as the core of how I personally think about the players in my system. Now, it's actually called user types because, again, talking to businesses about players, you still get people thinking, oh, so you're going to create Excel, but it's going to have Mario on it. No, I'm not. It's not going to be Call of Duty for Word. No. Stop thinking about people who play. Do think about people who play, but don't think about people who play. But think about games, but don't think about games. Users, much simpler. Right, now, monkey. So, we talked about the Ninja Monkey earlier. It was mentioned earlier. So obviously, I have monkey washed my book, and he's very upset about this. So he wanted to just get in here and remind me of something quickly. So thank you, monkey. Right. You can't always control the Ninja Monkey. So why he came up was to remind me that although I've got 6 types, everyone is really different still. So if you take those 6 types and think about people who are connected in just 2 different types, an achiever and a philanthropist are their 2 top types. They become someone different. Achiever and free spirit, something different. This isn't by any means a finished product, but Monkey was working with me at the moment on it. But the point is, the reason he came up was to say, look, you've already got these 6 types, but people don't fit into nice little buckets of 6. We're all different. We saw that big unique thing. But we can't deal with that in our heads when we're designing. We can't think about, I'm going to make the exact right mechanics for you, and then I'm going to do the same for you, and then I'm going to do the same for you. Because you'd have infinite combinations of stuff. So we do have to start thinking about it in a slightly more, I'm going to say the word now, compartmentalized way. There we go. I can never say that word. Yes. But that's just to kind of illustrate, that isn't the end of it. 6 types isn't the end of it by any stretch of the imagination. If you go and do the player types test, you're as likely to come out as a single player type as you are 3 different player types. So that would be yet another chart of what happens if you're an achiever, philanthropist, free spirit. That's where we're headed. We don't want to think about that because it's too hard. So we start building these frameworks and these taxonomies. But the purpose of this conversation with you now, how much time have I got, by the way?
You've got another 20.
Jesus Christ. Can anyone sing? No, right. So the whole purpose of all of that silliness, you can tell I've done this a while. It's been like 2 years since I did a talk. how do we use this information? How do we put it all together? So some people, I'll do this to you now because you're filming. Some people will create a survey. I created a survey. There are validated versions of the survey, the HEXAD 12, the 24, and they're very good. They are validated by people who are much cleverer than me, who put much more time into it than I did, and they validated my framework for me. It was fantastic. But they created a survey that basically tells you, at the point of doing that survey, what is your most prominent type or types. And that's awesome. But the problem with that kind of thing is, your type will change throughout the game, throughout the platform, throughout the system. So when Bartle did his research into player types, he also did a secondary bit of research that said, if you come in as a killer, what might you end as? If you come in as a socializer, what might you end as the game progresses, as you mature into it? So if we think about our gamified systems, just for a second, we're going to take a step back. We're building our system. Hopefully, we start with onboarding. We might even do pre-boarding, like encouragement, whatever it might be, to try and get someone in. We'll then do onboarding. We'll then try and do some engagement, and then we'll try and do some mastery. We'll try and keep them on board. Whichever framework you use, it's always about the same. Get them into the system, keep them in the system, give them something to do when they've mastered the system. Each one of those stages, they will be a different type, potentially, because we are encouraging different behaviors in them. So when they come into the system, we're very likely encouraging them, bribing them, giving them rewards of some description, just to pat them on the back and say, hey, Bernardo, well done. You clicked a button. Nice one, mate. You clicked it 10 times. Here's a badge. You're amazing. We're going to do that for the first 5 seconds of the engagement, because after that, it's going to bore them to tears. And then we're hoping that they've got into a bit more of an engagement. Somehow we're going to get them into that engagement. So we're going to move them from a player to maybe an achiever, because it's an educational platform. We get them in there because they are interested, they've been asked to do it, we're going to reward them, we're going to onboard them, we're going to teach them how to use it, and then we want them to start actually learning something. So they're going to move into being an achiever, and they're going to start learning stuff, doing stuff, being really good. But if we want to keep them, they're never going to keep being an achiever. There's a point where there's no more materials to learn. If it's just a standard course, that gets to a stage where there's nothing left to actually learn. It's not like martial arts or guitar where there's always something else to do. You get to a black belt, that's just the start of the next journey. So what happens next? Well, depending on how you build the platform, they might become a disruptor because they get fed up and they try and find something to annoy people with. They might become a philanthropist. They might go, right, I've learned all of this now. What I can do is I can go back into the platform and help people if you've built it to do that. If you haven't, they either do that or they disappear. They might become a socializer. You might have a social network attached to it where they might not be interested in the learning aspect of it, but they might still converse with people. I remember when I did Werback's course years and years and years ago when it first came out, they had a forum and people talked for quite a while after they finished their course. So there was a little bit of kind of a tail to the mastery. You'd come out and you'd still stay in there for a little bit longer. And then some people would then help others. Very little of this happened. And very little of this, because free spirit would need to be able to put content back into the course. But then again, if you allowed that, if people could then create their own questions or add their own knowledge to that course, they might go into the free spirit style of things and start creating new content. The point is, that's just one example of a potential journey somebody has as they go through it. And we've already considered 1, 2, 3 types maybe, possibly 4 if they get irritated at some point during it. And that's just for a simple thing like learning. And we all have used learning platforms, and we've all kind of gone through it and gone, oh, that's cool, got my certificate, off I go. That's the end of it. You're never going to go back into it unless you have to recertify. And they only make you recertify usually if there's new information or if they want to make more money off you. That's kind of the way it works. So I am Google Analytics 4 certified. My certification runs out, I think it ran out this week actually, but it hasn't actually changed since I last did it. It's actually got worse since I last did it. So anyone who uses GA4, you all, yeah, there we go. You all appreciate how bad GA4 is, yeah? Compared to the original GA. Yeah. So do I want to recertify in it? Not really, but I probably need to because otherwise my badge on LinkedIn's not valid anymore. So suddenly I'm now torn into this, I've got to go back to this all over again. I need to be encouraged back into it because my badge no longer exists. And I probably need that badge because it's useful for my job. And you can tell I'm really excited about that. So they've already failed on all of this because my excitement levels are having to redo one of the driest courses I've ever done is, I'm really, really thrilled about this. I'm thrilled about going back into here. There's no way I'm ever going to do any of the other ones except for maybe set fire to it. If you're from Google, I apologize. If you're a sponsor, if any of your sponsors are related to Google, I apologize, but please sort it out. Please make events usable again. So, where was I? Right, how do I use it? So, we could survey them and figure it out. We could survey them constantly during the process of them being in there. We can evolve the platform. That's really hard. Bernardo will know this. It's really hard to keep changing the way mechanics work in a platform as somebody evolves throughout their journey. You either have to keep testing them, which is boring, or you have to somehow figure out that they've got to a point where they're no longer engaged and throw something else at them, which is really difficult. AI might start helping, and I'm certainly, one of the reasons I'm training my Ninja Monkey chatbot is to understand a bit more about this. But the way I use these and the way I suggest to everybody to use them is exactly like this. They're personas. We've all used personas in UX, yeah? We all used personas. I'm Mabel, I'm 73, I don't have a touchscreen phone, I don't use the internet. How do I benefit from this experience? We've all used those. We use it in retail all the time. When we do gamification, a lot of the time what we do is we don't think about the players. We think about the science, we think about the KPIs, which is great. We think about the things we might be engaged with. Oh, I quite like Tetris, so I'm going to make a learning platform where every sum is a Tetris. Well, that's cool if you like Tetris. Which, to be fair, that's a really bad example. Most people like Tetris. But, it's not necessarily the right delivery mechanism. And you've only done it because you think it's a good idea. There's no real science to say that was the right way of doing this. So what I tend to do is I'll go, right, here's what I want to do, and here are the behaviors I want to see. I don't actually care too much about what the behaviors are when they come in, because I know pretty much what they're going to be. We know to encourage somebody in, we need to give them a reason to come in. We need to give them a reason to stay. That's fine. But what do I want my players to do? If it's an educational platform, I want them to learn. So there's no point putting Call of Duty halfway through their experience, because they've stopped learning. They're doing something else entirely. Now, if you're putting a simulation in, so back in the day I used to be involved in the Serious Games Awards, and some of the stuff they would do was incredible. Virtual reality simulators for battleground mechanics, battlefield medics, there we go. God, dear. I've gone caffeine-free recently, so it's not doing my brain any good. Yeah. And that was amazing, and that was really focused, but you did it once or twice, but then you're qualified, and it's not a real reason to go back into it. So we need to think about how do we challenge people in the way they need to be challenged to demonstrate the behaviors that give you the best outcomes for what you're trying to achieve. That's a very long sentence, doesn't mean much. Basically, if I want people to do social things, give them things that allow them to be social. Don't expect a social network to pop up just because you created a fun learning experience. You need to give them, go, how can I connect to others? Can I play with friends? How can I collaborate? How will I be recognized? Because it's still important to everyone to have recognition. That's part of that overall meaningful purpose. If I want people to help others, how can I help others? Simple question. If you want people in your platform to help other people, how can they do it? How can you make it easier for them to do it? And the point, again, is their motivation for being there is maybe different to other people's. They may all be there for the same experience, but their motivations are going to be different, and they're going to change over time. Back to our football example. The reason that somebody went there is because their dad only has 2 hours a week with them, so they go and watch football. 10 years later, they go and watch football because they love the game. And it reminds them of their dad. So the motivation has changed, but the experience hasn't. So we need to build our experiences with them in mind, but with the outcomes in mind. Well, I was talking to someone earlier over there, and Andrzej, about KPIs. We all have KPIs. Every system, every platform, every experience has to have a tangible outcome. And that's really hard in gamification. I remember back when I was doing this back in 2011, what's the outcome? They'll have fun. No one cared about that. bit less so now. People sort of do see that fun's useful. But how do you put a KPI on fun? Productivity, knowledge, connections. Who remembers? I'm going to point at Toby here. Toby was one of the first people I met who was interested in KPIs and gamification. His leaderboard at the time, Rise, that was all focused on the idea of giving you KPIs that you could actually see and you could understand how to work towards them. And it engaged everyone in different ways. For me, it was a social network because it gave me names of people I didn't know who were interested in the same things as me. Later on, it gave me a little bit of this. There were negatives to that, but I got to the top of the leaderboard and stayed there till it closed, actually. Humble brag. But that was really player at that point because I had started to be more interested in being at the top of the leaderboard than I was connecting with people because I connect with everyone. But then I started learning from people. I actually switched from player to learning because new people came onto the board. And I was like, oh, as my socializer side, I can go and talk to them and then I can learn from them because I don't know everything. None of us know everything. So just on that leaderboard, we all say leaderboards are bad. They aren't if they're used properly. And Toby was one of the first people I saw using them properly, where I got 3 different player types of myself just out of a leaderboard because it was done properly. So the point is, whilst we are all motivated differently, whilst we are all very unique individuals, when we build a system, the overall experience is going to be the same for everybody. They're going to be there for a reason. It's going to be filling in a timesheet. It's going to be content management. It's going to be all sorts of things it can be. I remember you had a CRM for a while. Do you still have the CRM? Yeah. Yeah. You might be in there and the points, badges, and leaderboards and whatever else may be are there to encourage you to do more of the right thing. But always think about what the player outcomes are when you're thinking about your players. What do you want them to do? How do you want them to do it? And what is the outcome you are looking for? Because for all of them, especially if it's like an educational system, the outcome has to be the same. But their journey towards their outcome could be completely different for everybody because they engage with it differently. And you have to account for that. So don't think about surveys at the beginning. Think about the behaviors throughout and treat them as individuals, but scalably. So, that's me. I got a 3-minute warning, so I think I've nailed that. Are there any questions? Oh, excellent. Oh, damn it. Go on. Toby.
So it's great to hear it. I was just wondering, I've since last speak to you, I've sort of joined a bigger company and I'm working in an enterprise right now. And we do an enormous number of personality tests across the board. So and you know them all, from enneagrams to insights to personalities. And I just wonder where the connection might be between those personality types and your work.
So those personality types are why I don't work at Lego, because I failed the personality test. I was too like the people who I'd be working with. There are connections to all of these things, because all of those tests, I'm not a big psychometric test lover, but they all tie into core motivations of why you're doing things and how you think about things. So you could tie that all together. I'm fairly certain somebody at some point did, what's the really big one? The really big psychometric? Myers-Briggs, yeah. I'm sure someone connected that to the player types at one point. But again, it just comes down to why do people do what they do. That's what all those things are testing, is why do you do things and how would you deal with things is what psychometric tests tend to come down to. So I think all of those could be connected just by understanding the behaviours that people are demonstrating, the behaviours that you want them to demonstrate, and connect them all in the middle somewhere. That sort of answer your question? It all comes back down to motivation. I think it all rolls back down to motivation. Why are you doing what you're doing, and how do I get you doing what I want you to do?
Yeah, I mean, the reason I'm asking is that quite often that's the landscape. So for example, our organisation, we already have a lot of details on everyone's personality types. So it's just interesting to see whether, once we then say how do we gamify within that, whether we can use that as the layer.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So if you take those personality types and then tie them back to player types, so think about whether that particular type is relatedness, whether it's team leadership, whether it's connected, whatever it may be. Start rolling those back till you get to one of those 4, maybe 6 types, and then look at the mechanics that engage with them, and you should engage with the same groups. The one that I'm really interested now is team dynamics around that, and how you connect team dynamics and build better teams, understanding their player types. That's kind of the next thing that Monkey and I are working on. I saw a little hand up at the back there.
I was wondering, you're saying you have to connect the behavior with the player type somewhere.
Yeah.
But how do you make sure that it's in the right spot? Or do you do it everywhere for all the players? Because it makes it quite complex.
So think about, when I build anything, I think about what am I trying to get them to do at the end? What's the final thing they need to do? And I build the behaviors backwards towards them. So you don't need to modify behaviors and player types all the way throughout the journey. Actually, really all you need to do is build a platform that doesn't matter what you come in as, you'll go out pretty much the way you want them to. So the mechanics in the middle of that will tend to all lead you towards the thing you want them to do. So you might come in and encourage them as a player and have a few mechanics for that, a few for achiever, which are probably similar, a few for socializer. But if you want them to be a philanthropist at the end, everything else then tries to bring all of those down into one type of behavior and then out at the end. And then maybe spread back out again to get them back engaged. But yeah, definitely don't change everything all the way throughout the journey because it's impossible. Think about start, middle, and finish, and then kind of it'll work itself out as they move through. Yep.
So it seems that the player types that you're presenting are more like behaviors.
Yes.
So the way I just want to clarify the way you're talking about it. It's not that you learn what player types your users are and then design for them. It's you learn what behaviors are tied to what types of patterns, and then you build that into the app.
That's the ideal way. You can do it the other way, and people do it the other way. If it's going to be a very short engagement, you don't have to worry too much about all of the different paths. If somebody comes in as a socializer, give them mechanics for a socializer. If they come in as a player, give them... that's fine if you're only expecting them to do a very short, single experience. If you're trying to keep them engaged, go the other direction, certainly. I did see one other hand. Sorry, does that answer your question? It does, yeah. I saw one other hand, and then we'll have to stop. Yep. There was one.
It was a
Similar question. I'll let you have the last one. Who else? Sorry. I'll talk to you later then.
Why don't you like personality tests? I'm not a fan of personality.
Well, so Myers-Briggs has been, by psychologists, has been poo-pooed for decades and is a money-making scheme. I failed a personality test to not get a job at Lego. I build psychometric tests, so I kind of know what goes into them. And for me, the reason I don't like surveys for player types is they tell you who you are at the moment you took the test. So if you look at the demographics for my player type quiz, the majority of people are 21 to 29. The majority of them are socializers and philanthropists, which are connected. And all it really tells me is they all got it from social media and did the survey from social media. So the moment they took that test, that's who they were taking a test. Doesn't mean that's who you are when you're confronted with an actual real-life problem. So for me, personality tests, they might give you a flavor, but businesses make decisions on those tests that aren't really representative of the people. They're representative of a nervous candidate sat there doing a psychometric test, and then the rest of their career is decided by, oh, well, you're this type, so you're never going to be a leader. You're a red hat, not a blue hat. All that kind of thing drives me crazy. And it's because I've at Capgemini for years, so I've been through all of these. I've done dozens of interviews on this stuff, and I've been psychometrically tested. And all that. And it for me, it gives you a snapshot. It doesn't give you an actual reality. Right, and on that note, I shall hand over to Pete.
Thank you very much, Andrzej. I went there for 10